The Bonder Brothers, written and performed by Andrew Wagstaff. Chapter 1. The mission was a simple one. Locate and observe a small group of military deserters who had established a small base on the fourth moon of the Tiboan system. However, the facility that stretched out before them was huge. Commander Owen Mendez and Cadet Torres Edwards were busy surveying the facility. Owen using the old-fashioned method of binoculars to record video and take snapshots, while Torres was using two small remote drones to move around the perimeter of the building. "No movement," Owen commented. "Judging from the layout, it's some sort of scientific facility." "Not exactly what was in the job description, sir," Torres reminded Owen. Owen focused on the lowest roof section. "We have to investigate, don't we?" Owen lowered his binoculars and sighed. "I guess we do." "How do we get inside? I've sent the drones around twice and there seems to be only one entrance." Owen smiled. "If this was a movie, we would knock out a couple of guards and steal their uniforms." Torres frowned. "But this is real life." "Unfortunately. So, we will have to do it the hard way. Follow me." Owen led Torres down a cliff they had been observing from. Getting on top of the building was trickier than they had expected. The walls were coated in some form of anti-magnetic gloss, meaning their magnetic boots were useless. So they had to rely on grapples and a firm grip. Eventually they made it onto the roof. Owen made his way to one of the large air filters and was looking for the inspection hatch that would lead into the building when Torres called them over. "Sir, look at this." Leaving the inspection hatch, Owen found Torres, who was kneeling down by a roof tile that was sitting slightly raised. Owen thought this odd, as these types of tiles were held together magnetically. He tried to pick it up and found it came away with no resistance. They both peered down the hole that led into a small room. Torres gave Owen a worried look. "Using your logic, if this was a movie, this would be a trap," Torres said. Owen gave him a half smile, then examined the tile. "No, someone else is here. Special forces, probably. Seems command doesn't trust us to get the job done." Owen braced himself on either side of the hole, then lowered himself down into the room. He looked up and beckoned Torres to follow. Torres passed both their weapons and his backpack down to Owen. He then lowered himself onto Owen's shoulders and grabbed the roof tile, holding it above his head. Owen knelt down, lowering both Torres and the tile, so, to an outside observer, nothing should look out of place. They found themselves in a storeroom filled with various supplies. Torres looked around. "Any uniforms?" Owen asked. Torres double-checked the shelves. "No, sir. Just computer parts and logistical supplies." Owen moved to the door. He found that the control panel had been removed and two wires leading to the security module had been removed and stripped of their covers. Owen took the two wires and reconnected them into the module and pushed the panel back into its mounting. Reaching into one of his belt pouches, he removed a small security device and inserted the connector into a port on the panel. For a moment nothing happened. Then the device beeped and the door slid open. Owen removed the device and thought why someone would remove the wires to the module. There wasn't a way to bypass it, not in that manner. Shrugging the thought aside, he suddenly noticed that Torres was halfway out the door with his weapon raised. Torres scanned the area, his weapon following his eyes as he looked around. Owen calmly followed behind. "Keep an eye out for any loose door panels," he said as he took the lead. Torres nodded and followed. They made their way along the corridors, past sealed labs, barracks, and a well-stocked kitchen, until they came to a door that, like the supply room, had had its control panel removed. Owen found the two bare wires as before and again reassembled the control panel. This time the security override took longer, presumably because this section was of a higher security rating than a simple storeroom, but after a few grueling seconds the door slid open. This time Owen went in first. What he saw almost made him vomit. Several large tubes filled with some sort of fluid that was being aerated, but it was what was inside the tubes that made Owen feel ill. Mutants. Human mutants. Their bodies deformed, their faces frozen in agony. In all, there were about 20 tubes, all with various mutant forms inside. "What in the name of the Alliance is this?" Torres exclaimed, looking very pale. Owen didn't answer and examined some of the mutants. In most cases, on their hands, instead of fingernails, they had claws. Their teeth were elongated and fang-like, and some of them had what looked like snouts. Torres gestured to the other end of the room, where a control station sat. Owen made his way over and found the main terminal had been left open, and it hadn't been secured. Presumably the other team that was ahead of them had found whatever they were looking for. The document on the screen read, Augmentation Isolation Test 14. Result, failure. Subjects were affected physically and mentally to the point of no return. Heightened aggression and loss of cognitive abilities reduced them to an animalistic state. Termination was necessary, subjects preserved for study at later date. Owen swallowed hard, trying to keep his stomach from emptying its contents. Suddenly, an alarm sounded. The two men ran to the door as a group of guards ran past the lab. Owen was just about to open the door when he heard a couple of guards stop outside the room. He flung himself back against the wall and took a knife from his belt, noticing Torres had already done the same. The two guards crept into the room, but were set upon by Owen and Torres before either of them could say anything. Owen's adversary kicked the knife out of his hand, and before Owen could do anything, had him on the floor. Owen wrapped his legs around the guard's neck and tried to spin the guard around, but to his surprise the guard reached down and grabbed his belt and flung him across the room. Torres, meanwhile, had latched himself onto his guard and was holding on for dear life. Strangely, this reminded him of the fair he used to attend with his sisters, and how they used to make him ride the mechanical bull, taking bets on how long Torres could stay on. Torres pulled himself out of the memory and focused on the guard who was trying to get rid of his passenger by slamming him into the walls. Owen noted that both guards didn't carry traditional guns, instead carried stun batons. His guard pulled out his stun baton and ignited it, the energy sparking. Owen looked around and grabbed a plastic tray off the table behind him, spilling some water from a container onto the floor. The guard swung the stun baton, but Owen blocked it with the tray, the plastic protecting him from the energy being emitted. Owen took the chance and kicked the guard in the knee. This didn't affect him much, but allowed Owen to knock the stun baton out of his hand and managed to drop the tray and jump on it as the stun baton made contact with the water, stunning the guard. Torres's guard had finally got a hold of him and had flung him into a workstation. Torres lay for a moment and felt some glass in his back, then noticed the guard coming at him with his own stun baton raised. It was at this moment that Torres felt a strength well up inside him. He caught the guard's arm mid-swing and bent it back. The guard yelled in pain, but was suddenly silenced by an impact from behind. Owen appeared holding the shorted-out stun baton from his guard that still made a useful club. He helped Torres off the table. "You fought well," he congratulated, and brushed off the glass, and he found a couple of pieces in Torres's arm that he slowly removed. "You okay?" he asked. Torres nodded, and Owen slapped him on the shoulder and went to retrieve their weapons, and did not see Torres remove what he at the time had thought was a piece of glass, but was in fact a needle. Whatever its contents had been was now inside Torres's body. He took a breath and followed Owen out the door.